good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. And we're thrilled to have everybody over here on our live session today. We're going to be talking about how you can elevate your service management, some of the best practices of how to go about service management, building up your service definitions, and finally unlocking that final value with ITS and DPM. Joining us today, we have the digital portfolio management team along with the special speaker who will provide his expert insights on this crucial topic for our customer success. And I'll let them introduce themselves very shortly. So I do want to kick off with our safe harbor slide, which is there, of course, to keep our lawyers happy. And to summarize what it says, you may see some forward-looking statements today that we might end up sharing related to roadmap or anything, but please don't make any purchasing decisions based on anything that's showcased in today's webinar. Okay. Moving on. So for today's session, we have Peter, who's joining in as an in-house expert for helping our customers define their services. I'll let you introduce yourself, Peter. So you can go ahead with that.
Hello, everybody. My name is Peter Rovellis. I'm an enterprise architect. If you don't know about that role, essentially it's a customer-facing role. I'm here to help customers get the most value out of ServiceNow. So I talk about lots of different things with customers. Obviously, technology that's sold by ServiceNow, but also operating model and defining your services.
Perfect. Thanks, Peter. We also have Caitlin Moores, Justin Harden, who've been in the services space for more than 7 years now, and they've been associated with Service Builder, Service Portfolio Management, and now Digital Portfolio Management, all the core products that help our customers get enabled in the service space. And then we also have me and Meghna supporting on Q&A, and we've also been associated with digital portfolio management and the upcoming Service Builder 2.0 version as well. And we've been with ServiceNow for more than 2 years now. And we'll be supporting the webinar today and also help answer any Q&A that's going to be popping up. Okay, so before we jump into the content, I do want to go over a few housekeeping items for today's event. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions that you might have during today's event. We'll try to answer them throughout the session. We have multiple folks joining in as panelists, so we can help answer the questions as quickly as possible. And also at the bottom of the screen, you might also find reactions button. Give us a quick reaction if you love what you're seeing on the screen right now. And if you want to get to know more about it in future as well, we're going to be looking at those reactions throughout, and happy reactions are always welcome. And we're also going to be sharing today's presentation and the recording after the event. It just takes like, I guess, 7 days in which you might get the full recording and the slides and everything getting rolled out to you and your emails as well. And after the webinar, you will be prompted to fill out a very short survey. Your feedback is highly super valuable to us. Whatever feedback we have received up till now for the previous live on ServiceNow sessions, we've always taken that into account. So if you have time, please take the survey as well. And we also have extensive lineup of future live on ServiceNows where you can interact with more ServiceNow experts like Peter and also your peers as well. And the link with more details will also be shared in the chat today. Okay, so we have a packed agenda designed to help you walk through the process of why achieving true service management should be table stakes for our customers. And second, we'll be discussing the meaning of service definition and share a few templates that help in defining services. Third, we're going to be focused on sharing information about a workshop format that can be followed to build out your service management practice to become a more service-oriented business. And finally, we'll cover about how DPM helps you track that complete service lifecycle and service performance through the plan, build, run info risk views for your stakeholders. Okay, with that in mind, I'm going to launch the first poll of the day to get to know what's everyone's perspective about service management and what kind of methodologies are currently being used. So I think the poll should be up right now. Please feel free to answer. Please feel free to read through it. It's a bit wordy poll right now that we've done, but it's more on like how ITIL framework is followed or whether you are currently focused on CSTM or it's something entirely different. Okay, gonna have the poll up for a few more seconds. Yeah, perfect. Still seeing some responses come in. ITIL framework, that's not surprising. Maximum of our audience is using CSTM and ITIL framework. Perfect. I still see a few more responses coming in. Okay, yeah, I think we have good amount of response now. But yeah, ITIL and CSTM, those are the top two options that I'm seeing currently pop up. But that's not surprising, and it is good to see those results as we move on to the content of the day and hand it over to you, Peter, to drive us forward.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. It was great to see 40+% around SLA and recognizing service owner as a job or a primary role. Those were really great to see. So I'm hoping that today's session will give you the additional information you need to take advantage of that. So first and foremost, I want to kind of start off with a quote. For those that know me, I often do this. Michael Porter of value chain and five forces analysis fame has said the essence of strategy is choosing what not to do. It's a very profound statement. You can't do everything, right? You have to focus to get good at it. This is the same thing that I say around service definition. It's not just important to say what you're going to do, but maybe even more important, say what you're no longer going to do. So all you people out there that leverage our platform where maybe you don't have a formal service defined, don't have catalog items that you need for people to ask for services, they use incidents, right? And so they submit an incident, they describe what they want. That's the situation that I'm talking about, is like everything's open, everything's an exception. We want to get really specific about what we're willing to do and what we're not willing to do. When I've worked with customers over the years, there's a number of earmarks for successful customers leveraging ServiceNow. There's a lot of really good things you probably recognize in here, like sponsorship and operating model and being certified. The one that isn't usually on this list for most folks is defining services. And for me, it's a passion. I definitely think that there's more to defining services than just setting up a ticket queue and an assignment group or just assigning an owner to a business application that's represented inside of ServiceNow. There's a lot of depth that we need to go into to define a service. I'm going to take you through that today. In conversations with customers, the language that they're using, a lot of times they confuse and conflate the three terms that you see here. They talk about a product as if it's a service. They talk about a process as if it's a service. So really, you need all three of these to do service management well, and they don't equate to each other. They're distinct things, and I'm going to help explain why. So when you define a service, essentially at the core of a lot of services is a product that you're using, right? So for service management services, the core of that is ServiceNow, right? But it's not just the product that you're configuring and delivering internally. It's the rest of the service that envelops it that is really the important stuff to define and do well. And within that, essentially a service is a function of the product and all the procedures that you put in place. So those procedures are driven by and governed by the processes that you have, incident, problem, change, all the other products that you have that deal with service definition, maybe outside of IT, like HR or customer service or any of the other services that are outside of IT. All of them can be considered enterprise service management, and you need both services and processes in order to do that well. If we were to look at all the componentry within there and look at the definition of each, what we'd be saying is, okay, products are a thing. And overly focused on building or configuring a thing does not mean that you've defined a service, right? So it's an innate value that the customer gets by using that tool or utility or application. And here's some examples of some products that are typical in most environments. For services, it's really the activities around that product, all the things that you do with the lifecycle management of that product, how you make it available to consumers, how you maintain it. It's a way of facilitating getting value without having to involve the customer or the consumer of the service in the details. So you're facilitating an outcome. A lot of the things that fit into that category from the IT side is end user compute or data storage, but also you have other things like HR for onboarding or finance for procurement. You can have services throughout the enterprise. With each service, if you're offering one level of service, that's fine. But often what happens is you need to differentiate between levels of service. And because you can't do everything for everybody at the same level of cost or the same level of rigor. So you might want to differentiate between, certain customer populations, where they're located. Sometimes geographies and governments drive certain policy and compliance. So all of those procedures end up being organized into offerings. Process is governance. So, a lot of times we don't think about it that way, but essentially what we're saying is this is the best practice way for all services to perform this task, this purpose. So essentially what you want to do is use a best practice setup, but then drive differentiation at the service level. So for each step in a process, you're going to have a procedure that's specific to that service. So if we're doing incident triage, you want to have a way of triaging your specific service, because your specific service has failure modes that don't appear in other services, right? So specific procedures about the service is really important to define. So on this list, the things that people focus in on a lot is they focus in on the products and they focus in on the processes at the expense of service offerings, and the procedures that you need to define about that service. How does this look in execution? So if we were to just simply look at a request process where a consumer of a service, they're in the Employee Center portal, they're searching, and they don't find anything because there hasn't been a knowledge article written. Like, we want to have a knowledge article written that describes the service so that they get a sense of whether they want it or not. If there's no catalog item, their only recourse is to create an incident against your service, right? So we want to actually create catalog items for the service that's being defined. The manager, might need to approve. If you don't define your services, that's all in the expectation of the consumer. So all the time that they're waiting for their manager to approve is time against your service. Instead, if you define the workflow, you define the SLAs, essentially the starting point is when that manager approves and you get through the fulfillment, and then the clock stops and you have a true measurement of your work, not other things that are going on in the environment. So service definition, specific artifacts in ServiceNow are key to execution of processes. A lot of times people are really frustrated with how the metrics of their processes aren't where they want them to be. A key to getting an improvement in that is defining your services, having all the raw material for the process to work. How do we get that done? Well, it's a combination of like a platform team, a ServiceNow team, building out a request management execution that makes sense in all of the stages of the execution, building out templates and training such that the service team can go and build what they need to. So when we look at this chart, we're looking at all services. There's templates and training. We don't need multiple versions of manager approval, right? So the ServiceNow team is going to go build that. But for routing and for work in progress, it's going to be templates and training, common set of rules because it's governance around how to suspend, put something on hold, what we do around acceptance of a request. Is it really done unless the requester says it's done? And then how we manage all the rules around closure and completeness. The vast majority of the work that's happening in requests, though, needs to be done by the service team. So the record producers, the routing rules, the specific workflow, not just for the work that they're doing, but for the work that the rest of the service teams that support them are doing. So you can see that it's really important to build the raw material that you need within ServiceNow. I have a structured approach that I've been using for years. What even before ServiceNow was a thing, that around defining services, around the basics that you need. Obviously, now I've configured it to be specifically about the artifacts that are in ServiceNow, but essentially it's a workshop that goes through defining your service basics. What are all your dependent services? What's your CMDB plan? You know, how do people request your service? How does it break, and how do you plan for fixing those things as quickly as possible? All your operational tasks, what constitutes a change in your environment, and then do what I call doing the math, right? Like how do all the maintenance hours line up? How do service level agreements line up? How much time is taken to do certain things? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend the next section of the presentation on all the templates that I have around service definition. One of the first steps is to know what services you have in your environment. Here's an example from a manufacturing company. You've got technology services, end user services, global business services that are the line of business, how the company makes money. In this particular case, it's a manufacturing company, so I've got supply chain, manufacturing, engineering, all those types of services. And then data services and security services that you might need. This isn't a comprehensive list. It gives you an idea of the level and the scope that we might talk about. I think one of the most important things to move away from being overly focused on products and business applications is to be very careful in how you name your services. You want to use a common capability type of name. So things like, end user services or collaboration, or if it's HR, it's compensation or benefits, right? You're not going to use a product name. You're not going to say your HR service is Workday, or your compute service is AWS. You're going to name it the thing that you're trying to deliver, cloud computing. And there's a couple of real reasons for doing that. One is, first and foremost, is products change over time. So the right way to solve that service problem, you're going to want to change the mix out, and you don't want to be self-identifying with a product, right? You want it to be the overall service. The other thing is that if you define your services kind of product by product, there's a lot of redundancy between products. So that somebody else might be, offering the same service that you're offering. So, you don't want that to proliferate. You want it to be rationalized, because, deciding what you're not going to do is really important, right? You want to consolidate, get really good at it. One of the ways that you can mitigate, different products is to actually leverage the service offering. So go ahead and delineate between products, between levels of service when you go ahead and do this. So a lot of times you think they might be separate services, but you can bring them together around the service offering. Very, very obvious thing to do. This is like deceptively simple, is to just define your service at a high level of who are my customers? What do I do for them? Kind of in bullet form, really simple. And then what are the products at the core of my services? Right? So if you just define this, essentially what you're doing is like you're setting the context for the visibility of your service. So when I say for compute, it's other IT service owners. Now I've essentially created visibility in the portal for all the things that I'm going to create around this compute service, right? So regular end users wouldn't even see this. That's powerful. It makes the experience better for all users. Being able to articulate really quickly the things that you're doing and not doing, right? And then what are the products that you use helps you get yourself ready for, building out a CMDB plan. It's the next topic on the list. So one of the things that's really important to do is don't leave it up to ServiceNow. Don't leave it up to administrators. Don't point the finger at the CMDB administrator. It's your job to define your service, to know what CIs are part of your service. How are you going to interrogate the network to find them? What information do you want to capture? Because after all, you're managing the life cycle of the service, so you need to define that. You need to look at the common services data model and build out a plan for how you're going to use that, no matter where you are in the journey of compliance to CSD. One of the most important things, how do people ask for your service? Again, you want to get them out of incidents and just typing whatever they want. You want to be able to be very structured in your approach to saying, hey, this is how I offer my service. And often, especially with services that are product-based, it's often a very simple structure. It's CUD, right? Everybody's heard of CRUD. It's CUD. It's create, update, decommission, or delete, right? So if you just think about it easily from that structure, you say, who's the requester? What do I need from them? What am I doing? And then for all the other teams, what do I need to share with them so that they can do their part? So if I'm delivering compute, I might need to have security, design a service account for that compute resource such that, things can be done at that level. And so there are other teams that need to be involved. You need to say who they are. You need to talk to them about how long they need to do that task and plan this all out, do the math, figure out how this is going to be done in terms of automation, playbooks, workflow, but also how long you're going to give yourself to do it. One of the most important things in defining your service is understanding your failure modes and being able to articulate in knowledge articles who's going to fix what. Some fixes you really want at that L0 level. It's a user just not understanding. They need some instruction. They can help themselves. You want to make sure that you provide the right level of documentation. It's not the service desk's job. It's the person that owns the service, right? You may ask for help. You may get help from others, but it's still you're accountable for defining at every one of these levels. What is the response? What's the knowledge article, playbook, or automation that I'm going to respond with for each of the failure modes that I have? So you essentially build a table and you say, okay, you do an exercise of here's all the failure modes that I have. And, some things you're going to have knowledge articles already because it just happened to be something that happens a lot, but you want to be comprehensive. You want to look at your entire solution and say, these are all the ways that it can fail. And these are all the teams that I need to get help from. I need to write articles for myself because I hire somebody new. They need to know how to do the job, day one. But if I've got a local team that goes out because it's a physical service, or I'm using a service desk or a help desk where end users can solve their own problems, I need to have a game plan and all the knowledge articles in place to satisfy that game plan. This is one of the more interesting topics in service definition, change requests. So I find that change control is one of the most overused ITIL processes. It's used many times where it's not appropriate, and everybody hates it, and you start to get into this whole rubber stamp approval cycle that doesn't help anybody because the whole purpose is to mitigate risk. And by the nature of a lot of the things that we do with a service, they are not risky at all. And so going ahead and having the change manager or whoever it has the authority over change, bringing them into a service definition and having a conversation about here's how my service changes. These are the things that I want to actually do as part of a service request or as part of my operational rigor on a continual basis. They are not change requests. You can say, hey, my service is actually just enacted as a task in a project for applications to deploy. So I don't want to do any change requests if I can avoid it. I'm going to do change requests just around lifecycle management of my service. But when it comes to a new application using my service to deploy, I'm going to just be a task in that other change request. Like these are the things that you can negotiate and document as part of your service. I usually have questions at this part. Are there any questions from the crowd? All right, I'm going to keep going. So, surprisingly, this happens every time I work with a customer, that whole dependency between services, when you start mapping out everybody's service hours, when they're available, when they're not available, um, they basically say, okay, there's no time that we can make a change up and down the stack for somebody. Like they haven't done the math, they haven't figured out, how to align all of the outage windows such that they can go ahead and do maintenance type work. Sometimes the customer will say, "Oh, I'm a 24/7 shop." Okay, well, if you are 24/7 and this doesn't apply, what does apply is the design. Like, how do you get to 24/7? Because you're still doing maintenance. So, like, how are you managing shutting off certain portions of the service in a cadence? Like, that needs to be documented. And people need to understand how that all of that works. So you can see like some of the things that I've shared, and there's a lot more to share. There's different lists for whether you're doing more of a case management service, like a HR or customer service. It can be a different list, and I've got different workshop templates for those types of services as well. But in the end, with all these templates, what you've really done is you've laid out a new knowledge article game plan. So you've got holes in those knowledge articles. Maybe they're not targeting the right audience. So you've got a plan for describing your service in terms of knowledge articles and playbooks. You've got a plan for how you're doing your CMDB. You've got catalog items that you need to build, or if they're already out there, you need to adjust for including tasks by all of the supporting services that you have. Being able to take each one of your failure modes and having kind of like a triage knowledge article or a fix it knowledge article for that failure mode. Making sure that your change management policies are specific to your service, not just generic. You touch anything and you've got to do a change request. Being able to do your maintenance hours, being able to pull all of this information into a service level agreement, operating level agreement for your service, and being able to manage change control of that. Like get yourself into a continual improvement cycle. So I think what's up next, before I get into how we execute against all of this, is another poll question. So if you would please pop up the new
Yeah,
poll.
yeah, Peter, I'm just launching that one.
Awesome.
Okay, yeah, I think it should be up on the screens for everybody.
So we're looking
It's
for you to do multi-select on this. So this is a series of questions to help us understand, you, the audience, and how far you've delved into some of these items. So we'll give you 20
Yep.
seconds.
Yeah, I'm seeing some responses pop up. We might have to keep it for longer than 20 seconds, considering it's a bit loaded question.
Yeah, and might
Yeah.
take a minute to think.
Yeah.
And while you're thinking through it, I think one of the things that happens a lot with customers is that they tell me about the exception. They say, "Oh yeah, we're doing that." But really what they're talking about is a single instance of, doing it really well. It's an exception for them. Really what we're trying to get across is it really needs to be done in a broad base across all your services. You can prioritize, you can put more effort on a particular service because it's the most important. That's fine. But it's a broad-based application. Don't let that you do this in one instance or two instances stop you from doing it everywhere, because that's where the real value is hidden.
I still see a few more responses coming in. I keep it up for, I guess, 1 to 2 more seconds. Then we can close it up. But up till now, we have like 63% who talk about using catalog items for any updates or even decommissioning your services. And that's a trend that we've also been noticing that's happening across. our customers, service catalog being that one place in which the service definition of the process starts.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I'm gonna end the poll, but yeah, the majority comes out for service catalog, and then we have services getting described in knowledge articles.
So I apologize for the trick question, but common service levels for incident resolution by priority is a trick question because if you're not doing that, it's a good thing. It means that you're doing the opposite, which is for your service, for a particular failure mode, you've got a recovery time, and it's specific to your service, not a common thing that's just generic across everybody. So, trick question there. Sorry about that, but good information.
Yeah, I think all the answers are in, so I'm gonna end it.
All right, so let me move on to the actual workshop construction and how it's laid out. So for service definition workshops, you've seen this slide already. We've got a bunch of things in the agenda that we want to cover. I shared a lot of those templates already. How it's actually executed, I use a 2-week sprint. You can do this a lot of different ways, but how I like to do it is I use a 2-week sprint. And so what we're really doing is taking all those services that we saw at the beginning, where it was like technology services, data services. We're taking that whole list and we're taking them, one at a time and doing the service definition workshop over 2 weeks. Day one of the 2 weeks is working with the service owner. So we've identified a service and an owner, and we're working with them to gather up what do they already have in ServiceNow? What are the things that are already in the inventory? By Wednesday of that first week, we have a list of all the supporting people that need to be there, process owners, other service teams that you depend on. We bring them into an interactive workshop going through the templates that we just talked about and making decisions, finding out what the catalog items need to be, finding out what are the processes or the procedures that need to be done by the individual teams that are supporting this service, all the things that we need to do about doing the math, doing all the numbers all the way up, figuring out what constitutes change, making sure that those other teams, if you're doing backups on my compute resource, I want an assurance that you're doing it. So you're going to tell me how I can go and double check, or you can, tell me how you're going to tell me it worked. All of that stuff gets worked out collaboratively in that workshop. What we end up with is a huge to-do list. So we've identified all those things that we need to get done, and we put that into some sort of Kanban board. I'd love to see it as a visual task board in ServiceNow. That'd be the best way to do it. But your tool of choice, make sure that it's got a date, someone's assigned to it, and you're taking the whole service team and all the supporting teams, and everybody's contributing to getting that work done. You're using all the same processes that you use today, right? You're using knowledge management. You're going ahead and making changes via standard change for change requests. It's all the stuff that you know and love. It's just now you're using it more, and you're using it in a very targeted way. By the end of 2 weeks, depending on the capacity, depending on what's being asked for, ideally at the end of 2 weeks, you've got everything in ServiceNow that you need. And now your execution within all these other processes, incident, problem, change, your execution is driving down the numbers, the time it takes to do those things. It's upping the efficiency, upping the accuracy. Now you're reaching new levels of process improvement and process metrics, because the raw material to execute is now in ServiceNow. And you've started a continual improvement cycle where, okay, I define what it is, but in looking at it, I know I'm not happy. Like, one of the things that happens all the time with this process is people see improvements in their service that they want to make immediately, because now it's all laid out for them to see. and they have now the idea is, oh, I got to go fix this. Oh, I got to go fix that. Like the network team is classic. Network team is like bulletproofed everything as if everything's production. And then when they go through this process, they start thinking about service levels and they start thinking, okay, how can I do offerings around the network? Not something that they would normally think if they don't go through this process. Okay, so that is looking at it from the lens of just one service. If we were to build an overall program with lots of projects and lots of things to do across the enterprise scope of services that you have, we would put together something like this. So we've got a program that we're putting in place. We would have leadership both on the customer side and the ServiceNow side. Some of the folks on the ServiceNow side that might help you with that could be, the enterprise architect, someone like me, could be an impact platform architect, could be a number of resources that are available to you and the partner side, right? You'd go ahead and you go through each one of these projects, service identification workshop that we can help you with, service definition workshops based on the plan that comes out of the identification workshop, making some changes to your processes to better leverage services, make them more services aware, and then get each one of these services into a continual improvement cycle. And there's a slew of benefits that goes along with this. Obviously, you're being much more efficient and cost effective in the definition of your service, because one of the things that you're doing, going back to the quote, is you're saying what you're not going to do, right? And I'm not going to spend 80% of my time chasing exceptions. I'm going to get really good at the stuff I've said and committed to doing. Being able to enhance that experience for the consumer of the service. It ends up being a lot easier to find your service, declaring it, understanding it deeply. It allows people to be able to say, okay, I can use this service. I know what the rules are. I know what I'm accountable for. I know what the service provider is accountable for. So how we lay that out in a timeline, it's choose your own adventure, choose your own journey. I can't tell you how fast you can go through this. So I've kind of built a timeline of the sequence of these projects and what outcomes would be for a now, next, last set of phases. If you can do this in an order of months, fantastic. If it takes you, 2 years to do the whole thing, the good news is really early, you're getting benefit. As soon as you finish defining one service and those artifacts are in ServiceNow, you're getting benefit. So you don't have to wait for a long project to run its course. You can get incremental benefit along the way. And so, essentially all this material is going to be available to you, such that you can leverage it. There's even more. So if you want to do this at your customer, please reach out to your EA. That EA will reach out to me, and I'll provide a lot of the material necessary to do these workshops. Do we have any questions in the chat?
Well, not in the chat. There's just questions related to the resources where they're going to be. Okay. And we do have one question that's related to when, like, let's say, I think Rob is asking whether when we are meeting with the service owner to define the service, we should also define service offerings and then define the asks of those offerings.
Absolutely right. So some of what I'm trying to do is make this very approachable. So from an ITIL perspective, there's a lot of content that I could have gone into. I held back to just give a basic overview, but you're absolutely right. Offerings is a big part of the extended version that I offer. And that's why you saw it up front.
Yeah. And I think Catherine is asking whether more online resources will be shared. Yes. All the resources that we are talking about today would be shared after the live on ServiceNow as well. And yes, this is all getting documented and getting published on the ServiceNow community. We have the Digital Portfolio Management Product Hub. That's where you will be able to find all of the resources that Peter has been talking about and also the recording as well as the slide deck of today's session.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much
Any more questions for Peter on the content that he's been presenting before we move on to the next session? Okay. Yes, Michelle, we'll try to have templates in format that's easily accessible by all. Okay.
Great. Excellent. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Peter. I'm gonna take over the slide share. Okay. Before we move on to the next session, we do have a poll question for everybody. And it's more of about understanding where is everybody with their digital portfolio management and what do they understand with the product. Digital portfolio management is what we see as the final end product that you get to see that final value of putting in all the hard work that you do with whether it's CSTM, building up your CMDB, or whether it's defining your services. And thank you so much, Peter, for giving that insightful, simplified templates and workshop guidance that can guide our customers to truly become service oriented. And the and through the poll, just let us know what's the most critical burning problem that's on everybody's plate for DPM. And it's a multi-select, so feel free to add in more options as well. Give more time for folks to answer.
And Nikita, maybe while we're waiting, there is a good question around like the challenge or the struggle with defining business services compared to more of the technical services, which like the experience so far has been that that's a little bit easier and that it gets trickier with business services. So, Peter, I don't know if there are any um, tips or suggestions you have for that differentiation in particular.
Yeah, I do. I actually have a whole common services data model kind of workshop that I do, and within that I have a section that's kind of dedicated to knowing the difference. And really, what it comes down to it is, like who's consuming the service, and I've kind of got a little if then else example to go through. So you're going to have technical consumers as well as business consumers, and sometimes that drives you to just a technical service, just a business service, or both. And so what I'll do is I'll share that as part of the material, that one slide.
That sounds perfect. And I think the poll is also almost completed. See last few responses trickle in. But yes, I think the maximum is coming in. There's not enough support to implement DPM from the stakeholders, not enough buy-in from leadership, I would say. And the second is the data not getting mapped to your services and your applications according to CSTM. So I would say that's why we've been coming up with these sessions related to the CSTM demystification that we did last time and build the one right now on service definition, so we can help bridge some of that knowledge gap that's happening on how to actually go about mapping your data and actually being able to showcase the final value of DPM to get that buy-in or support from your stakeholders. So DPM is providing that final lens that your business stakeholders are going to be looking at. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll quickly. And yeah, I think should be done. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next. So I know DP, a lot of you might be familiar with what digital portfolio management is, but there might be few folks who are hearing about this product for the first time. It's one of those few products that cross across different applications. And what you see over here is a very powerful visual that covers the basis of all that digital portfolio management offer. You can bridge together multiple parts of platform and track your performance data through the single lens that gets provided for a solution owner as part of DPM. Now, a solution owner may have a number of services, they might have a number of offerings that they're handling and applications that they manage as part of their role. For example, let's say a app support manager may be owning the finance platform, the ITSM tool, and other multiple bespoke internal application. Now, DPM allows them to group all of those services together into one single pane of glass. It's all about breaking down those silos that you're having across your organization and providing that real-time visibility into your services and application. And with DPM, you're not just managing your IT, but you're actually strategically aligning it with your business goals that we've talked about. And it helps those stakeholders in managing those solutions more effectively, whether it's thinking of DPM as that single source of truth for your performance and health of your digital assets. And DPM was launched as part of ITSM Standards Q in San Diego Family Release. It's available on ITSM standard licensing. There isn't any other external licensing that you need to purchase to use digital portfolio management. It comes with the business stakeholder user. So there's no, essentially, basically, it's not a paid role right now. And we have been having multiple store releases over the past year in which we've been bringing in new product capabilities that is helping enhance that view that's available right now for business stakeholders. And DPM,
Sorry
yeah,
to
Caitlin.
interrupt you, but before you go beyond, I think that slide is perfect to answer this one question or maybe speak to this one question more live. So the question was, is there a slide or list that shows the difference between APM, CSDM, and DPM? So I think this slide does a pretty good job of trying to illustrate the difference, but also how they're interrelated. Maybe you could speak a little bit more to that question in particular.
Yes, definitely. So how CSTM and APM and DPM are different. So there are a certain amount of information that a EA enterprise architect might be looking at. That's like from the lens of business app and app services, more of hardware and software. Whereas DPM brings in information not just from the technical instances that are currently up and running, but also what's happening on the strategy side of things, what's happening on, let's say, the incident sides of things. So it's bringing together that view and that information across these different applications. APM is very much for one persona, that is an enterprise architect, but I would say DPM lies a bit above that. And CSTM is more of like populating those records in your tables according to one particular methodology. And if you're following that methodologically, apparently, I would say 50% of your DPM implementation might already be done if you have those data relationships mapped out according to the CSTM guidance. Hope that answers the question. And of course, if there are more deep dive resources that you're looking for what's the exact capability that causes the differentiation between both of these products, we are happy to provide that as well after the session. Okay. So I do want to talk about how DPM is that final payoff value after defining all your services. So is the result of all the hard work that you've already put in. It has these multiple tabs that can walk you through the different lifecycle phases of your service or your business application in one common experience. So this is the service view from a stakeholder lens. On the plan tab, they can see what's happening on the roadmap. Are there any new demands coming in for, let's say, my business application? And you get a similar lens for other solution types that you have. For example, services, for example, any service offerings and service instances as well. And then on build tab, you can start thinking about, this is one of the view of the roadmap that you can see by clicking on a roadmap. And based on the licensing that you have, different view can pop up over here. But the build tab allows you to see what's our current projects that are going on. Is there any changes that is currently going on for my business apps or any service offering? So right now, the screen that you're seeing is for a service offering. It shows you what's the active projects that are by current status, if there's any critical projects that have been overdue. So this is the lens that a business stakeholder is looking towards, that one entire life cycle for my service offering. And then on the run tab, this is where you're able to see that offering's performance. What's my current availability? Is the availability being dropping over the last few months? Is there something that's happening due to anything on my service instances that happening due to any incidents that have been repeatedly occurring? Is there any change that's causing this issue? And you are able to see what's the mean time to resolution, any new requests that are coming in. And not just this, the run tab is highly configurable. If you are currently using performance analytics and you want to add in your own metrics, you can add in your own flavor over here. So that this is becoming more customizable, I would say, or configurable for you. And you can look at what's essential to your organization at that point. And under info tab, this is where I would say you would see information. What's the final consumers of my service? How many folks are subscribing to it? Whether it's being managed? What's the support group for it? What's the cost? What's the contractors? Are there any vendors that are providing that service offering for me? And but after we've run through all this, the basic question that we always get is usually, how do I implement the workspace? There's a lot that you're telling it and throwing it out at me, but how do I go about it step by step? So this is where the Digital Portfolio Management Admin Center comes in, that's providing that in-product guidance for you to think about, how do I go about defining those tabs and those solution performance and those metrics for each and one of your solution type. So let's say currently you're focused on services with offerings. That's the one solution type that you're working on towards. If it's more of like, oh, my org is more business app right now, we haven't yet matured enough to convert those and look at those lens through services, you can have that flexibility over here. And it provides that step-by-step information, like how are your current solutions that you have already defined, whether they are ready to be surfaced up in DPM. How can I structure them into a portfolio? Are there any planning items related and records that are related to my current solution? You can look at all that through this guided flow that's present out there. And you can map out your specific KPI groups. Out of the box, we have 4 to 5 KPI groups that are present. So that like basically kickstarts and jumpstarts your journey as well. And besides the admin center, which is giving you all of this information, we also have a settings tab in the admin center that allows you to hide or edit some of those data and some of those widgets. So we hear that our customer says, oh, currently I'm not tracking changes in ServiceNow. I don't want to surface up those records. Can I hide that? With the settings tab, you are able to configure all of that data. You can hide the entire plan tab itself if you're not currently focused on the ideation or the strategy phase of your solution type. You can directly just move on to tracking the service performance by using the run tab. And besides this end product guidance that you have through the admin center, we've also launched a production adoption playbook that's able to help you design your journey. And this playbook has the entire maturity steps. Which step do I need to think about first before moving on to the next step? The first, of course, starts with deciding what's your key outcomes and the solution type that you want to focus on right now. Then you can ensure that whether your core data tables are currently populated in CMDB, you can leverage Service Builder to create some of those services and also see the format and the templates in the workshop that Peter just shared to start building and thinking about your service definition. Install the plugins, assess the data readiness in DVM Admin Center itself for your solution types. And then you can start thinking about, how do I categorize this data into different portfolios? This is where you can start using the guided setup flow that's present in the DPM Admin Center. Decide which key lifecycle phase is essential for you right now to track and configure it using the settings tab in DPM. And then you can start thinking about, are my record types getting mapped to the correct solution or not? Is my incident getting mapped to the service offering or not? That's how you can start seeing up some of that data pop up into DPM. Now, each and every one of these levels are building on each other, but you can enter this adoption playbook or each and any one of the steps. And there's a deeper dive in this as well. That is currently that builds out slowly. I don't want to do the entire build right now in interest of time, but this is all available right now on ServiceNow community, in which you can look at, okay, I'm currently in this step in my maturity model. What's the outcome that I'm going to receive? Why should I build a strong foundation? What's going to help me in future by building that? And how do I scale up that solution in future? And how do I think about creating personal portfolios? How do I think about completing that entire feedback loop of, let's say, any ideation or any incidents that's happening? What's the continual improvement requests that I can raise? That's where DPM comes into picture. And this adoption playbook is supposed to help you along that journey. And another thing that I do want to talk about is the new guided enterprise portfolio creation. So this is something that's recently launched in DPM, in which you can create your service portfolios from scratch in DPM itself. And we've also given in the product itself 3 templates that you can access right now, was related to EduCost, related to an IT service portfolio, and one related to how your organization structure is created. This is currently readily available for everybody. And if you are currently on the Yokohama version and are also upgrading to Zurich, this is currently accessible to you in your product. Okay, and as we reach to the end, we do have some more additional resources which you can access after this session to get to know more about DPM. And of course, we'll also be sharing all the resources that Peter just shared and the knowledge that he has transferred us over today. And you can also check out other enablement resources. The adoption playbook that I just walked through, we'll have a session in future as well, where we'll be walking through the entire playbook. It is a huge document that's going to help you understand each and every one of those steps. We also have DPM Academy videos that are out there that help you think about, okay, how do I configure some of those KPIs? What's happening currently with my needs attention panel? And if there's any questions that you have about service availability, how does that get calculated in DPM? There are community articles about that as well. And of course, if there are any questions, please feel free to ask them on DPM community. We regularly monitor that and we answer that as well. Okay, and I do want to share more information about other resources that are provided by ServiceNow as a whole to help our customers implement and optimize the platform that you have. And the three offerings that are at the heart of our customer success ecosystem is ServiceNow Impact. That's more about it's a customer success product that helps you maximize the value with long-term adoption guidance and support. And we do have our training and certification resources available through the ServiceNow University, which helps you build the organization talent you're needing to succeed. And we also have our expert services. That's our ServiceNow professional services that can help you with implementation and optimizing your ServiceNow investments. Thank you all for joining us today. And please let us know what you thought about today's event with our post-event survey. And thank you, Peter, for spending your time and also for sharing all the resources that we're going to pass on to our customers as well. And anybody else, if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to anybody from my team. All of us are pretty open to answering your thoughts. If you have any contradictory opinions as well, help us understand those so that we can keep on revamping our products as well as the enablement resources that are available to each and every one of you.